Thank you and good morning, everyone. I appreciate being here today. I am the Chief Financial Officer at HUD, and we heard a lot of technical aspects this morning. And what I thought I'd do today is spend a little bit of time on where we are at HUD with modernization. And I'll give a background where we are, how we got started with this. And I do appreciate the title of modernization versus IT modernization. When I think of IT modernization has a whole different connotation to it than modernization. I do think of all this as a business process change. My background is I spent 37 years at Ernst & Young in the private sector. In the audit practice, and I had this opportunity once I retired to become the Chief Financial Officer at HUD. The Secretary brought me aboard to fix our financial issues that we have at HUD. When I think of, I'll give you a little bit of background of what HUD operates. We have 12 different programs, we have 37 different grants, we have FHA, we have Ginnie Mae. We have IT systems that go back 40 years that are still running COBOL. We have a very fragmented agency. It's very siloed. We have phenomenal people. We have people that are very, very highly intelligent, very dedicated to the mission that we have. But when you look at the financial conditions and you look at our business processes, very, very antiquated, very backwards, very manual process, very paper-driven. And so the Secretary and I, we talked about what we need to do at HUD to bring this into the next century, if you will. And that requires a different way of thinking. And we started the process by thinking, where do we want to be? We visualized what we can be and what we want to be. And we said, we need to modernize HUD. And IT is definitely an enabler with that. And everything I heard today, we're wrestling with. But when I think about, someone made a comment earlier, I listened to some of the presentations, someone said that you need to know a little bit about a technology to make it work. I've got a different perspective. I think you need to know what technology can do. When I think about if I was in 1902 running a distribution company, and I saw a horse delivering product from point A to point B, and I saw a car delivering that same product 100 times faster, I just want that car. I don't need to know how it works. I can find a driver, I'll find the mechanics, I'll find the builder. And that's sort of what we're doing at HUD. We've got a leadership team that's completely dedicated to modernization. We have a leadership team that works very collaboratively. The CFO spot at HUD was empty for 7 years. The person that Obama appointed and went through Senate confirmation unfortunately passed away in the first year. So this office has been empty for 7.5 years, and so we're bringing in myself, who knows business process technologies and knows business excellence and process excellence, and we're making a difference along that way. So how do we get started? We knew what we wanted to do, where we want to be, and think of HUD as multiple programs, 37 grants, every program doing their own thing. Some of the programs have its own technology. Some of the programs are dealing with grantees on their own, and they have their own individual data and data sets that we talked about. Again, they're all running like individual businesses. There's not a cohesive effort. And what we wanted to do was think about HUD as one HUD, not as 37 different programs, FHA and Ginnie Mae. So we were fortunate enough to work with the American Innovation Center, which is spearheaded by Jared Kushner, and it's a White House initiative, and they've developed through the GSA a Center of Excellence. And the Center of Excellence is a group of people that are bringing private sector experience into the government, and they've experimented with it with USDA. It was very successful. They competed for a second agency to be involved in that, and we were fortunate enough to be selected. And why were we selected? Well, we certainly had a need. Again, the old fragmented systems. We had a leadership team that was devoted to it, and we had sponsorship from the very top. So we were very fortunate to work with the GSA, and they've helped us, and I'll talk a little bit about these 4 areas that we're focused on and what it means to us and how we're making this work at HUD. But we needed help on bringing in current thinking and data analytics, all the stuff you talked about this morning we're working through. We have a contact center. We work with lots of different agencies, and we don't have a cohesive effort on that. We have customer experience that we wanted to embellish and improve, and also with the elimination of manual processes. We did this in 3 phases. We started with the discovery phase of what do we have and what do we need. We went into prototyping, how do we move data from the different reports and databases we have into a centralized database, and we're starting the implementation. And we are in the finishing up the prototype and transitioning. We know what we want to do, we know where we're heading, and we're on to the implementation stage of that. With data analytics, I'm a huge fan of this. At Ernst & Young, I was an audit partner, and I worked with large global companies. And I know the power of data analytics. And when you think of us at HUD, each one of these programs and these IT systems have data buried deep into the bowels of our systems. What we need to do is extract that. Now, I call this is part of my finance transformation that we're doing at HUD. And when I said my first 3 months, again, I knew nothing about how government operates. I just knew the private sector stuff. And I asked my team to figure out, help me work through all this. And one of the barriers that came very quickly to me was I don't control resources like I did in the private sector. I can't buy a cup of coffee without Congress approving it. And I can't control the people. We have unions, and it's hard to move people. It's not as easy to move people in and out of jobs as it is in the private sector. So I had those barriers that we were stuck with. If I could blow up our systems at HUD and start over, it'd be a $500 million exercise over a multi-year. We don't have that type of budget. We never get it from Congress. So what we're doing is trying to figure out how do we take our antiquated systems with great data built into the different HUDs, and how do we put the cheaper technology on top of it, extract it, get it into a data warehouse so we can do our data visualization and start making better decisions. And when I think of data analytics, think about 12 different programs with different data. What we want to do is get to a point where we can pull out our iPhone and go to Detroit and say, Detroit, we've given you $3 billion in these 37 different grants. This is how much you've spent. This is how much you have available. That would be very powerful information that we don't have right now. And that's the type of information we're trying to get through data analytics and employing a lot of the technologies and things that you were hearing about this morning. We're going to put some governance around this. We have a chief data officer that we're going to be hiring. They're going to be responsible for this at HUD-wide. Within this initiative, we're starting to pull data from our different IT systems, putting it into a central data warehouse, scrubbing it so it's all in readable, consistent format. We're developing dashboards. We've started this process, and it's amazing what you can do with information. And I did hear earlier that once you get this information, be careful what you wish for. I think that's a phenomenal way to look at this, because you want to know what you don't know. And we're doing some of this in our lead program, in our inspection processes out at the PHAs and the houses we serve. Once we get that data on inspection process, we can start becoming predictive as to where the issues are around the country, either seasonal, geographical, within a block type thing. So this is a very, very powerful tool, and all of this is going to be very transformative for HUD and how we do business. Very excited about this. Within this data analytics, separately, I started a robotics process. Robotics from the private sector, those that you in the private sector know this, it's been around for a while, but not a long while. Robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, I would say, is a 5 or 6 year phenomena within the private sector. I was fortunate enough to work on large accounts that I was able to experiment with this and help pioneer it within our firm. What I told our team is we have so many manual processes. We can create a lot more efficiency and effectiveness through robotics. We took an accounting process, grant accruals. I won't bore you with the details on that, but to say it was a 2,300 hour process, we got that down to 25 or 65 hours. 2,200 hours down to 65. My team was skeptical. They didn't want to hear about robotics. Then the minds go to job elimination, and the people are fearful that they're not going to have something to do the next day when this is implemented. And I promised them this is not about job elimination. This is about getting you home at night at 5 o'clock versus 10 o'clock. And it's about getting you away from moving numbers around, opening up Excel spreadsheets, moving data from one spreadsheet to another, doing the math. I'd rather you be a data analyzer than a data mover. Once we had that very small project in place, saw the success of it, my team was completely energized. They came back a week later. I challenged them with this, come back with other processes that you can see that this could be applied to. We took that small example, they came back within a week or so with 37 different processes, 65,000 hours. So then we're developing a roadmap over the next 18 months to get those 37 processes in place. We put a video together on it. We're sharing that with all the programs at HUD, and there's a lot of energy around HUD about how to get rid of the mundane, non-value-added work and get it into being more analyzing and helping us run our business. Very successful, started small. I have a great vision of what this can be, but you need to start small because it's scary to folks. But we're excited about that initiative. We also did the IDE, the intelligence data extraction. We put a process in place, and we were very excited about this as well. We took the A133 audited financial statements that are in a government-wide database. I see some head shaking, so you're aware. We extracted those from one of our programs, and we applied some IDE intelligence to it, and we quickly were able to focus on risk agencies, or risk PHAs, the public housing authorities that we deal with. And then we took those PHAs, tied it to all the other PHAs in our programs, and so we know where the high-risk PHAs are through that very simple process. That got a lot of intelligence at the Treasury. They want to take what we're doing and apply it government-wide. So we'll start that process. They gave us a little bit of money to make that work. So this whole data analytics is a big change at HUD. It's a different way of thinking, and we're having a lot of fun with it, and it's getting a lot of energy. The contact centers, again, very disjointed. We have 6 different contact centers, over 100 lines, and we have 65 field offices. It's expensive, it's cumbersome, whether it's the PHAs, the public housing authorities, or the grantees, the people we serve can all dial into these. And just think about trying to navigate through 100 different lines and what that means. Within our FHA business, we've got a very good call center. It's a single line. It extracts data and building a knowledge database so we can do the machine learning from that and be a little more predictive. We're rolling that out HUD-wide. So the goal is to get this into one call center, one line. It'll capture data that we're gathering and start the machine learning process related to that with the knowledge that we're sharing. Again, a very exciting initiatives that we're focused on, and great success. And by the way, this is one of the things that I constantly get asked when I do these talks is, how do you make this sustainable? One of the big differences you notice between private sector and the government is, private sector, you never have a complete wipeout of all the administration at top every 4 to 8 years. I recognize that very early on. So as we're doing this initiatives, I'm not a big believer in this political versus the career. We want to make sure the career people are very bought into all of this and they get the wisdom and the value of it. And that's how we're working together to make sure this is sustainable on changes in administration, because this isn't going to happen overnight. I did recognize there was an initiative 6 or 7 years ago that was started and it died. It cost us a lot of money and never went anywhere. So when I'm working with Congress about funding for this, they become skeptical. Geez, we gave you this so much money 7 or 8 years ago. It didn't get what you wanted to get out of it. And I said, I can't speak to that, but I've got a vision of what we need to do here to make this work. And we're constantly in communication with them, because some of this, this does take money to do, and we need their permission. Another area that we are focused on is the customer experience. We have 3,500 PHAs that we deal with, 37 different grants. A lot of our PHAs and our grantees pull from different funding within HUD. And they're filling out information for each grant. If the big charity out in Columbus, Ohio, where my house is, my family lives, I visit with them once in a while. They pull from 6 or 7 different revenue streams from us. They fill out information for each one of those. They would like to work with us in a more simpler way. And how powerful would it be to fill out information one and have that feed to us so we can do the grant analysis in our shop versus having them fill it out 12 times. More efficient for them and quite frankly a lot more efficient for us. So we're setting up a customer experience. It'll start off as a separate initiative. We hope to have it to be its own office someday. We're going to bring aboard a customer experience officer. And the whole idea is to develop our systems and our processes and change our IT to make it easier for our grantees to work with us. Another great initiative that we are excited about. Cloud adoption. We have a lot of manual processes. And when I think of our FHA business, when we go through claims and loss avoidance, we do that on a paper level. And some of these claims that we look at could have, I was shocked by the number I heard, could have anywhere from 300 to 1,000 sheets of paper that we comb through. And we're automating that process, applying some IDE technology to it to accelerate that. And this also helps from a risk assessment standpoint. If you remember the example, what I mentioned earlier about reading the 133 audited financial statements and extracting that, that's what this technology can be. You can do 100% compliance versus right now we're testing on a test basis. And I look at FHA. We sample of our servicers that go through and service our loans, and we sample maybe 10 to 15%. This technology will give us the ability to do high risk analysis on all 100 or all 100% of our service providers. So this is another initiative that we're extraordinarily excited about. And I listened a little bit this morning of the conversations and all the stuff that everyone's focused on from governance, critical. It's got to start at the top. It's got to cascade its way down. You need buy-in and sponsorship leadership. You have to have that from the senior leadership or else you'll never get that cascaded down. And I think one of the security questions that was asked earlier, top of mind, as we go through our cloud adoption, we are putting a lot of this in the cloud. Some of it we're keeping local, and the security concerns are a big part of that decisioning process. And then get your people bought in. That's kind of the critical. The way I think of this, I've got a grand vision for how this can be. Not everyone shares in that vision right away because it's just no one likes to think differently than they have in the past in many ways. But you do some small successes and you can start to see this steamroll through the organization with excitement. So I would like to just open it up for questions, and because I want to really talk about what you want to talk about. If there are any questions, or yes.
Well, having just retired from government recently, I can feel your pain in terms of the government stovepipe. So, Congress and engaging with Congress.
Yeah.
What are your lessons learned there? Because again, they've been sold the same bill of goods numerous times. Say this will work just this time.
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I'm coming from the private sector. I literally had zero government experience. I was in our large global account group, which means I worked one of my clients that I signed off on was a McDonald's, just to give you a perspective. So I know big, I know broad, and I know complexity. But I don't know the complexity of government. So I have a deputy CFO that said, we're never going to get this money, and it's really hard to do. And I said, well, why don't we, I approached it like I did with working with a board or an audit committee. I said, why don't we take them some PowerPoints, let's talk about where we want to go and then how we're going to get there. So I spent a lot of time in the first 6 months developing relationships around government. And I spent a lot of time talking about finance transformation, of which this is included. And I kept them informed. I said, this is, to do finance transformation right at HUD, it's a $500 million effort. I know you're not going to give me $500 million, so you're going to have to give me time. This is 3 to 5 years. And I went with a very comprehensive, easy to understand plan that they understand. And I said, don't give it to me all at once, give it to me each year and hold me accountable for the progress we're making. So I've got a very close working relationship with our friends at Congress and OMB. I mean, they play a role in this as well. So I spend a lot of time fostering those relationships and a lot of time explaining what we're doing, and you got to create some consistency in those messages. create some accountability to yourself and to your team to make sure that it's you're delivering as you go. And that's actually been quite successful so far. Yes, I can hear you.
Just for the live stream.
For all the friends on the internet. So yeah, just the COEs. I'm really curious about some of the best practices and working with those, because it could be a challenge in a decentralized model. So I'm curious for best practices on that.
With the COE?
Yes, with the COEs.
Yeah, so they've been very helpful to us. We could have gotten where we wanted to get, but the COE, they helped us accelerate the process. They came in, we talked about our vision. They helped us put a plan together. They helped us do the baseline discovery phase, if you will. They practiced or used some of the techniques they had over at USDA. I'm a big fan of them. I love shared service center concepts, and that's what this is. They're helping us with the procurement. They're helping us with our thought process. They're helping us to think about how we can work with customers. They're helping us with the data analytics, the type of things that we can look at. As it relates to, you talked about I think you talked about the decentralization side of it. That's a trickier part. And I get that. So I set up an agency-wide integrity task